welcome, welcome. Happy Hunger Games! And may the odds be ever in your favor. Now, before we begin, we have a very special film brought to you all the way from the capital.
Edmonton's new city plan is a pretty dramatic pivot from traditional plans. It plans for 1 million more people, the impacts of climate change, and the massive energy transition that's underway around the world.
Hi, my name is Waida Hassan, and I was the lead engineer on the development of the city plan, which is our long-term strategy for how our city grows, moves, and does all the great things that cities do.
It all starts right at the top of the city plan in the first of 5 big moves under the innocuous title, Greener as We Grow.
Our understanding is that this is the first official plan in Canada, at least, that embeds its carbon budget into its plan. And that's a big deal because it means that everything within the plan has to be working towards that goal. So, like I said, so that's one of the goals, is that we maintain our budget of 135 megatons, that we have net zero emissions per person, and that we plant 2 million trees by the time we achieve 2 million people.
City Council declared a climate emergency in 2019 and instructed staff to update the city's energy transition plan to the 1.5-degree level of ambition in the Paris Climate Accord.
Basically, the city plan is a very broad long-term document, plans our city out to 2 million people. So it sets us up for those big term goals, big long-term goals. And then the energy transition strategy gets down to the brass tacks of how do we do it.
The energy transition strategy calls for the electrification of transportation, the use of clean energy, and net zero buildings. The city plan sets the tone for a more compact city, a shift to more walking, cycling, and transit, and a much more energy-efficient city. This is where the 15-minute city concept comes in.
It means that you can, walk, bike, transit to a park, to your grocery store, to a coffee shop. You may still need to use your car to get to other destinations that are not within your district, but you should be able to do kind of all of the most common things that you do in your day within your district without having to use a car. Doesn't mean you'll never use a car. You still will. And one of our big goals or targets in the city plan is to have 50% of our trips made by active modes and transit.
Meanwhile, Edmonton is developing a model carbon-neutral community for 30,000 residents in its core that demonstrates what inner-city livable neighborhoods can look like.
Certainly, Blatchford is transformational in so many ways. Like, it embodies a lot of what the city plan is trying to achieve in a neighborhood scale. How the homes are built, in terms of the energy efficiency of them.
What's happening in Oxford?
Well, Oxford has something called a 15-minute city that they want to implement. We have already been told by Duncan Enright, who's got the title as a cabinet as being the head of transport and development, but actually seems to not want to do too much development and only want certain kinds of transport. What they want to do, now bear in mind that Oxford already has lots of LTNs, low traffic neighbourhoods, which we've seen happen all across the country. There's been gridlock in places like Hackney, Haringey and in Brixton, and we'll come back to that. But they have a number of LTNs that have really suffocated local businesses and residents. And now they're saying what they want to have is bus gates. They call them all a trial. They say it's a trial. When they did, but they have bus gates, which will mean you can't drive in many arteries, and you're only allowed 100 passes a year. So if you have 2 cars, that means 50 each, to go to certain areas, and you otherwise have to go much further around a whole ring road. So it's meaning that people's journeys that are really important are getting massively delayed. There's far more pollution. It's allegedly to stop some pollution, they say, but there's pollution often in very run-down areas. Many people in East Oxford who are much poorer and much more run down, they don't have facilities around them in 15 minutes to walk to. So once again, ordinary people are being punished more. But the thing that's most problematic with this in Oxford, and we're seeing it happen in some other cities across the UK, is that when consultations go out, like they have done with the low-traffic neighbourhoods, the majority of people are responding saying no. 5,600 respondents in Oxford responded. And if you look at, there was a Freedom of Information form, if you look at the responses on some, over 3,600 were negative on one of them, which constituted 93%. In spite of all of that, and also people going around saying that, there were representatives saying the majority of people believe in this, businesses have challenged it, residents have challenged it, and they're still going ahead. And they're calling it all a trial. But the trial of the 15-minute city can't exist without the trial of the LTNs. And as Duncan Enright said, it's happening anyway. Now, another thing to note about this, where this has come from is that the International C40s, which is mayors internationally, who Sadiq Khan is currently the chair of that, so they're from around the States and other countries internationally, we've got a declaration to tackle the emergency climate crisis. Right. As though the issue in cities is not better hospitals or housing or infrastructure or transport or any of those things, but there's this crisis. It's almost like a perpetual state of crisis, rather than a sober addressing of how we deal with things if there are some conditions that we need to change. And he, in London, Sadiq Khan, who's the current mayor, who's now saying he's going to stand for a third term, has said, well, even though 73% responded against ULEZ expansion, where you have taxi drivers and, again, working class people being impacted in their areas, and it's another tax on drivers and impositions, even though we said that, well, it's not a referendum, I'm not really that interested, I'm not doing it like that, utterly undemocratic, a whole patrician attitude. We've seen that, the Muslim community in Oxford can't get to the mosque, elderly people and others. And what's going to be happening is, I know certainly at Together we have a lot of signatories and members in Oxford, in Edinburgh, in Cardiff and in Canterbury, where these things are all happening. They are organising and they're getting vocal. And I think that people should realise that, you might think that this is a done deal, but a lot of people are very unhappy. And just as lockdown has finished and we've gone through all of this and all these businesses are suffering, now a lot of them are being killed by this, and it's really, really wrong.
Does it sound to you, Stephanie, like, oh, this benevolent thing, we're going to save the planet and it's not going to be a huge imposition, but it's got this coercive undertone where there's no lack of choice, and as Alan's just explained so brilliantly, no lack of democracy in this decision-making process?
Well, absolutely. I think that's one of the most objectionable, concerning things, is the fact that any objections from residents is or will be overruled. But I think, we've spent much of the morning talking about freedom of speech. This is about freedom of choice, the choice to use whatever transport that is available to you, that you can afford, as to how you move.
British people just need to be reminded that they pay for everything. They are the masters. And the people in the House of Commons and the House of Lords and councils throughout the country are the servants. And until the servants need to relearn their role. It's not their job to start bossing us around. It's not their job to do anti-democratic things like the zoning we see in Oxford. And they need to be reminded of who's in charge. And the people of this country are in charge. That's it. We pay for everything.
What would you say your biggest fear is regarding this?
So, the 100 trips that they're now talking about that you're allowed to do in your own city, I remind you, will become 80 trips. It will then become 50 trips. It will then become 30 and 40. And in the end, you won't be allowed to leave your zone at all. So do not believe what these people tell you. Do not believe their assurances that it will be fair and equitable. Do not believe that it will have anything to do with saving the planet. It will not. It's designed to control, just as masks were designed to control. Just in the COVID thing was like an hors d'oeuvre. That's all it was. And you just have to join the dots. You have Bill Gates, largest landowner in America. They're now encouraging people to eat bugs.
So I'm with Dave Carpin, the Reform candidate here in Oxfordshire. Dave, why are you here?
Well, I'm here because it's clearly wrong that people should be constrained in terms of where they can travel. We should have the right to travel without lets nor hindrance. We should be free to travel within our borders and to foreign countries. So within Oxfordshire, it seems ludicrous to me that you would be constrained your travel within a city.
So speaking to people here from Oxford, they're actually saying with these LTNs, or low traffic neighbourhoods, it's actually having the opposite desired effect. the county council is saying they're implementing it to reduce pollution, but they're saying it's actually causing more pollution, with many cars that what would be a quick journey are now sat on the road in idle, and the city is just full of pollution. So you're saying with all these LTNs, that they're actually causing more pollution, with all these cars sitting idly?
Yeah, what they have done is they have sort of channeled all the cars. They have stopped pollution in 2 streets and caused more pollution on a sort of 2 miles long road, long, and it's spreading along both sides of the main Cowley Road where I live, That's what I get affected by personally.
How much longer are cars on Cowley Road now than what they used to be?
Well, I used to go across, to the end of the Cowley Road within 2-3 minutes. Now it's taking me 25 minutes, just get to the Ring Road. And when I get to Ring Road is not moving. So it's much open area around Ring Road, but still pollution just moves with the wind.
What does that mean if you are looking after your elderly mum and she's in one of those 15-minute sections and you're in another one, and maybe you've got kids at a school in your one and you don't want to uproot your children and take them away from their friends, and you don't want to put your mum in a care home? What does it mean if you want to use the little local shop that you've supported for years to buy, because they sell lovely organic food or something, and you can't get to that section of the city? And it's going to crush small businesses. It's going to crush family lives that can't stay in their segments. And basically, we're going into the Hunger Games, aren't we?